I'm Arthur. I'm alcoholic. I'm also an addict. Thank you for hosting me, Mike, and I'm really happy to be here to talk about this step. I did do this work. I'm still doing this work. I have been doing it for some time. I was taught how to do it here at meetings like this. I was warned about the consequences for not doing it and continuing it. And I have experience, psychologically and internally with pausing on that and delaying but no relapse, emotionally, mentally, or otherwise. Feelings when it gets hard, but no relapse. Thank God. I think, this whole chapter I've always found it like to be one of the most hopeful in so many different ways. In the beginning, it talks a lot about, it talks in the background a lot about a step one. There's a lot of assumption that you're showing up to this step with all of these pre-fixed ideas, pre-ingrained and pre-practiced concepts and ways of living that deal with spirituality. They make no bones about it right out of the gate. When I first sat down with my sponsor and went through this chapter, all I could comprehend about it was that we were going to talk about God. So my answer was to spend more time in the Bible. And he warned me not to do that. And I did it because I was afraid. Because what I didn't realize then was that in that fear, there was the dishonesty that I was still in control. And what was further dishonest about that dishonesty was that if I had been, I wouldn't have a sponsor. I probably wouldn't have landed here. Which was even more dishonest. I had become beaten into a position, into a place where I really was at a crossroad in my life. And I didn't understand and fully comprehend the consequences of everything that I had been doing or not doing. It was so far beyond the party, beyond the drink, beyond the drugs. Those, if anything, those were the vessel for not feeling like shit. That wasn't the problem. It was the choices and the lifestyle that preceded it that was the problem. It was, more importantly, the attitude that preceded it that was the problem. That's precisely what this chapter is about. And there's warnings all over it about not having the right attitude and the consequences for coming in here and not having the right attitude. And for those who are new, we're talking about, you not playing God. The problem with that thought is that when I came in, I could have a shitload of evidence about why I was failing at playing God and be the only one who believed I was doing a great job. That is the root of this dishonesty that later becomes unfolded through a 2-year inventory and 7 notebooks and a 5-month amends. So, to simplify it, which my sponsor was perfect at doing with simple things like, "You're full of shit." He was so eloquent at just cutting through the chase and stopping me in my tracks when I would want to run off on this semantical, analytical, observation of what was taking place. And he would ask me to come to Millbury, and I would be, to his house when we were doing this work, and I thought it would be an opportunity where I could tell him what I know, and he would say, "Meet me at the laundry." And I'd fold his clothes. It was like some, Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi. Like, what the? Are you kidding me? I'm gonna fold your, and we would talk. I didn't understand then the importance of something as simple as that. And it really was a simple thing to do, but I didn't understand how much I needed things to be simple. He did. That's why folding was important, because I didn't understand simplicity. Everything was about a feeling, or what I was thinking, or what I wanted, or where I was going. It was never just about being present. That's why folding was important, because it forced me to be present. And most of the time, it didn't feel very good. I didn't want to fold clothes. I didn't want to be in his company. Half the time, he pissed me off. Half the time, he was tearing me up about something. Just this constant barrage of confrontation or challenge of thoughts or ideologies or beliefs or ways of being that he was constantly confronting it all the time. I was driving through Winthrop with him, and we had a guy in the back that he was sponsoring who's a friend of mine, still is, and he's passed now. But we were on the shore, and we'd gotten displaced, and we were coming from Portsmouth, the Portsmouth Big Book Step Study meeting, and Noel was notorious for, "Let's take a drive." Fuck you and your drives. I don't want to take a drive. I want to go home. Seriously, I just want to go home. I've spent enough time with you. We left at 6. Exactly what I was thinking and feeling. And so I was pissed, and we're in Winthrop, and he's smiling, and I'm unhappy, and I think I was 7-8 months into this, work, and I just wanted to go home and do my own thing. And he says, "Man, look at those houses up on the hill, that are situated. They're sitting right on the ocean. They must be worth a fortune, and they're just beautiful." And I went, "Yeah, I'd like to have one of those." And he stopped the car. And he went, "Of course you would. That's your problem. You couldn't just appreciate it for the fact that it belonged to somebody else." He did shit like that all the time. It was constant. And, it has nothing and it has everything to do with this step all at the same time. The point is that right from the very beginning, I came in with concepts. It doesn't matter really, what they were or what they weren't. What matters is what they were not. They were not this concept. They were not the concept that I probably should be done having a concept. Because everything I've been doing up until this point hadn't worked. So it's probably time to stop. It's probably time to consider a new way. And in looking back on this, it's hindsight, having worked with this and helped other people with it and talked about it and spoke about it and listened about it and written about it. Total loss of train of thought there. I wasn't supposed to have that next statement, whatever it was. So, having done a lot of work in here, it changed me. It didn't really change me so much at the time. It was, that I could, notice, that I could realize. I really thought that when I got to this point, I was supposed to figure out what God was. And it wasn't about that at all. Working through this showed me that what I had done prior wasn't working, and that if I was willing to reconsider my position and my belief as it pertains to God and the realm of the Spirit, that I could start anew. And what I learned was that the dependence, the dependence which really only happened in my mind, because I wasn't a demonstrator of I believe in God ever in my life, but in my head I was. And I had a concept of God that was very juvenile, I know now, but it was what I had. And I was raised unreligiously and without really those foundations. So everything I understood about God was what I extracted from conversations and my mother and life. So it was this bit and piece kind of fabrication from my experience growing up that really was the only foundation I had in a concept that was bigger than me. But all it really was a bunch of ideas. There was never a demonstration. There was just a lot of ideas about what I think God wants for me and how I'm supposed to act based on the Nativity movie that I saw last Christmas. Based on the warning that if I don't behave, God will, start bowling again in heaven, and because he's pissed off, because it's, that's how you explain thunder. And he's bowling loudly because you wronged him. So when I came in, that's what I had. But there was no dependency there. And what's refreshing about step 2 is that they're not saying you have to have it here, not here at this step. They're just asking me to consider my prior position, to contemplate it, to ask myself, how well has it worked? Could you be wrong? Are you willing to look at something new? Willingness is all they look for in this step. It's not about figuring out what God is. It's not about any of that. It's not about mental reasoning and it's intellectual reasoning. None of that. It's simply about contemplation, consideration. I think the most important thing here is, the catch is, or the hook is, you're not going to do it if you're still in turmoil in step 1. If you're still in the fight in your head, and you don't see the lack of power in step 1 and all the prior conversations with your sponsor, then you're not here yet. Because if you show up, this has been my experience, and you're still mentally kind of in the kicking and screaming mode, which you might be, and chances are you probably are. And that's okay. It's just how you're in that mental kickback mode. If you're in the kickback mode of belligerent denial, I don't have to change, you're in trouble. This doesn't work. If you come here and smile and you go home and close the door with family and you're an asshole, you're not here. Like Noah would say, you're full of shit. You're not ready. They warn us over and over again in this step of that. One of the things that is a very passive kind of warning is, at the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious contact. There's a very passive kind of statement behind that. They're suggesting what you have had prior isn't good. There's many things behind these words that as you go through it, you'll learn and you'll see. God will reveal those things to you. If you look in the spiritual experience, it's riddled with terms like transformation, change, profound, alteration. They hammer it home half a dozen times because they're trying to make the simple point that you're a mess. And if you don't change the mindset that you brought in here, you're not going to get through this work. And that's not me speaking. That's just the book. I mean, there's a second warning on 568, reminding us what they already told us in the prior page of We Agnostics. He can only be defeated, or her, by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. They had already said that in We Agnostics. They're repeating it again at the end of this statement. Just kind of warning us that maybe your attitude has a lot to do with why you are where you are. And that's what needs to change. Only God makes that possible. If I had the power to will the changes myself, psychologically and emotionally, that were necessary to keep relationships healthy and harmonious, I would not spend a Saturday morning in Worcester at the AA meeting. I would never have landed here to begin with. So I found out in step 2 that I had, as small as it was, what I needed to commence into a relationship with God, a new relationship with God, which would be by His design and not my own. I found out that I was full of prejudgment, that I was completely self-reliant, even though I didn't have any evidence to prove I was successful at it. I just had a barrage of shit behind me. But yet I walked around a winner. Decided, told my boss why I should be boss. Told other people how to act, how to think, how to respond, how to feel. I had all the good reasons in my head to justify my assholeness. But that's all it was in my head. Came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity there has to be consideration then, if I'm at this point and I'm willing to look at this, then it has to be preceded by an admission of powerlessness first. Otherwise, I can't hear you when you talk to me about God. So, if you are struggling here, which a lot of people might be struggling, but let's face it, the God concept doesn't come across well to people who think they're God. It's probably going to piss you off to hear about it. You can overcome it if you work hard enough at seeing the shit show that landed you there to be asking the question in the first place. If you're honest. And the book says that. These are not my words. It says, if we're honest with ourselves. And how it works, it talks about there being a group of people who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. Are you one of them? Am I? They're suggesting there are those people who simply can't get it. So, you can't really address the need for even considering step 2 until you see the failure in the preceding step, the self-failure. Hopefully you're working with people and at enough meetings and a sponsor who's effective at helping you to see the crap that you've convinced yourself is flowers. My sponsor could see the truth where I could not. That saved my life. To me, there was love in telling my wife what to wear. There was love in that. How can you not see my love? To me, there was love in a moment of rage, because the rage was the proof of how much I loved you. Pay no attention to the foot through the wall. That's just how much I care about you. The truth is, I'm insecure, I'm afraid, I'm weak. The truth is, I validate myself by pointing out your failures. The truth is, I got a glass chin. The truth is, I'm making it your job to make me something. Now, if that rings home to you, congratulations. You've entered behavioral modification. This is where we are. You've won. You've arrived. Don't pat yourself on the back yet, because the people that have been affected by this behavior don't owe you a cookie. All they have been waiting for, you're finally doing. Should have been done a long time ago. No good step 1. To me, it's impossible to have the attitude of, I need you, God, if I'm still at the controls. You're not willing at that point. You can mouth it all you want. Just be honest. If you're not there, you're not there. With that attitude, you won't fail. Honesty, willingness, open-mindedness. These are the key. Remember, like it says, and I hate to quote the book, but we're building an arch. They talk about this in the 3rd step, through which we'll pass to freedom. Step 2 is a cornerstone. You want to lay hay where there's supposed to be a piece of granite? That's on you. And look back and go, I don't know why it fell. Yes, I've fallen 13 times since I wrote all this 4th step. Oh, so you counted on the 4th step to fix you. Because you assumed that was going to be the answer. Not the truth. The truth is, you didn't yield. The truth is, you reserved part of yourself. The truth is, you still want to be at the controls. Just say it. It's okay. You're with a bunch of people who believe that they have a right, without licenses and training, to be at the controls. So those are the conversations that I had with my sponsor. Needless to say, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on them. They were hard. They were painful. But I'm present now. I'm not a dictator. I'm a partner, not an abusive husband. I'm a co-worker, not a ruler or a baby. And what did I do? I did what I was told, and I wrote an inventory. And then I talked about it. And then I went out and I tried to make things right with the people that had got hurt in my wake. And I spend the remainder of my time living in that amends by not regressing back to that attitude that they talk about. That's the fight now, is regression. Because it's part of who I am. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And every time my knee jerks, I hand myself my ass. And usually, hopefully, there aren't too many people in the way who get the shrapnel when it happens. Make no mistake about it, we are here for psychological change. That can only be brought about by an act of providence. If you think you have the ability to fix yourself, there's the door. Good luck. My hat's off to you. I'm all set. Last time I thought I had the ability to fix myself, I was sleeping on a mattress on Oriot Street, waiting for a prostitute to come back with an 8-ball. That's how successful I was. I'm all set. It's been 18 years since I've had to see that, and I don't look forward to seeing it ever again. I know that hide side of me. He'll kill me. I don't know what that had to do with step 2, but there's just, so I would just wrap up by saying that you have to be clear that there's insanity there. Step 1, and more about alcoholism, Bill's story, and there's a solution. Time and time again, lay out all of the conditions that precede a drink, a fall, a self-destructive, bender. They talk about it all the time. Suggesting that not only have I been dishonest about how I use, but I've been dishonest about why I'm using. And I'm going to carry that through however many years I've been carrying it. So when I'm arrived at this point and stopped by somebody who says, you really don't know what you think you know, that's a hard pill to swallow. I couldn't see the side of the coin that God has blessed me with seeing today before this work. That is the restoration of sanity that we're reading about. That God has now given me the ability to see what I was blind to prior to the psychological change that came about from doing this work. That is step 2 in a nutshell. I didn't believe God would restore me to sanity. When I started this work, I thought I would restore me to sanity. I thought pushing my pen would be my restoration to sanity. My inventory would be my restoration to my sanity. And by the time I had to go out and clean up a mess in the 9th step and own what I did wrong, I knew then I didn't restore me to anything. But God restored me to everything. Because without him, I would have never went back and said, or had the courage to say what I did wrong, or have been willing to change it going forward. I knew that that had not come from me. So if you think it's all you, pre-9th step work, and you're in the hustle and the step study and the process and you're killing it, you probably are. Stay with it. Believe me, a lot of people out there will thank you for staying here, that don't have to deal with you not being here and how you are when you're not. You'll be killing it. I promise you. If you think it's all you, that's okay. By the time you get to your 9th step, you're going to realize it hasn't been you at all. God's all right with you thinking that. I really believe that. He was all right with me. And it's very humbling. I would just say that if you're in this process, kill it. If you're at the crossroad, you've got a choice to make. What's it going to be? That's been my experience. And I thank you so much for sharing, listening. Almost. And hearing me again. Thank you so much.